Today we will reflect on the chapter in the book by Dr. Laura and her rabbi on the commandment, do not steal. This book has much practical advice as to how to live a godly life in the modern world from observations by Dr. Laura and her viewers. And Dr. Laura has heard these questions many times. Is it stealing when it's from a company or a government instead of from people? Is it stealing if they wouldn't really notice it's gone because they have so much? Is it stealing if it's not fair that I don't have what so many other people have? Is it stealing if I mean to give it back eventually before they notice or need it? Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. At the end of our talk, we'll discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint script we uploaded to SlideShare, which includes illustrations. Our sister blog includes footnotes, and both include our Amazon book links. Quite often, when you break one command, you break many commands, and this is especially true of theft. Envy precedes theft. Adultery steals affection from your neighbor's wife. Murder steals a life. Bearing false witness steals your neighbor's reputation. And even dishonoring your parents or those in authority steals the respect that is due to them. Dr. Laura also discusses sexual abuse when innocence is stolen. Dr. Laura opens this reflection. People spend a lot of time redefining stealing in order to increase their comfort zone as they assert themselves in a world of needs, wants, possessions, power struggles, fame, fortune, desire, envy, loss, hurt, greed, and antisocial personalities. This observation implies that many people steal because they feel they're being taken advantage of, or they themselves are the target of loss, hurt, and greed. They want to get even with the world, although she doesn't develop this thought in depth. What sets apart Dr. Laura's discussion of this commandment, do not steal, even when compared to the discussions by the preachers and church fathers, is her retelling of the many excuses her listeners have given over the years to justify theft. The commentary on this commandment is sparse, perhaps because it seems so terse, thou shalt not steal. And many of Dr. Laura's listeners were calling in to her show to find someone to reassure them that they were okay. And often our friends and acquaintances may do the same with us. And we all need to push back when we're asked to be complicit and not condone harming our neighbors or stealing from them. Just as courts award extra punitive damages against egregious crimes, so the Torah, and the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, so the Torah exacts penalties for theft. In Exodus 22, those found with stolen goods must pay back the victim double what he stole. In Numbers 5, when a thief confesses a sin, he must pay the victim back what he stole, plus 20%. Especially egregious is the theft of valuable farm animals. In Exodus 21, the thief must return 5 oxen for every one stolen, and 4 sheep for every one stolen. Also, in the Wild Wild West, the horse thief was hung. In Exodus 2, the thief could be sold into slavery if he could not repay the victim his principal, but not the penalties. Or he could work to pay off his debt for no more than 6 years, because the Torah requires that all slaves and servants be freed in their 7th year of service. Kidnapping is seen as stealing a life. Exodus 21 condemns kidnappers to death. That same chapter also punishes masters who steal from slaves, freeing them if their master blinds an eye or knocks out a tooth. Another type of modern kidnapping Dr. Laura discusses is one parent moves far away after a separation or divorce, stealing their time from the other parent, often lying by telling their children that the other parent doesn't want them or love them. Dr. Laura then lists the many other excuses many people give to justify theft, such as, I did not know it was hot. Dr. Laura reminds us that a Jewish law states that it is forbidden to buy something from a known thief, even if he assures you that it is not stolen. When you buy stolen property, you are an accessory to a theft, which is as great a crime as the theft itself. And finders keepers, and I didn't steal it, they made a stupid mistake. If you find something and have no way of knowing who it belongs to, and there's no lost and found department to return it to, then you can keep it. But you must return it if you can. The Torah requires in Exodus 23 that you return your enemy's ox or donkey if you find them wandering the countryside. In modern times, we should alert a clerk if they make an error counting cash in our favor, and if we don't, we are thieves. Dr. Laura reminds us, while it may not be illegal, it certainly is immoral knowingly not to pay fair price for your purchases, regardless of the IQ level of the clerk. It is only fair considering all my past bad luck and problems. Just because others have taken advantage of you in the past does not excuse you from taking advantage of others today. Likewise, you should not cheat on your taxes even if you think the government is wasting your tax dollars. Dr. Laura tells us of a listener who thanked her for nagging everyone. She had filed an insurance claim for a lost wedding ring, but canceled the claim when she found the ring. There was also a viewer who caught a $100 error in their favor on their last paycheck and offered to pay it back. And I also might add, this increases the chance that your ex-boss will give you a good recommendation. I deserve it because I don't have it. Dr. Laura retells the story of an armored car that crashed into a low-income neighborhood, spilling thousands of dollars of dollar bills, which are eagerly scooped up by the surprised residents. In interviews in the local newspaper, many of the poor saw this as a gift from God. But stealing is never right. Now, I'm surprised she didn't repeat the story I've heard in the news several times over the years, where a department store calls the police to arrest a shoplifter. Sometimes when the thief is a struggling single mother stealing for her child, the police will sometimes pay her bill themselves so they don't have to arrest her. And stealing is never right, but it is also not right to pay someone starvation wages. St. John Chrysostom teaches us that when we do not give alms to the poor, we too are guilty of theft. Surely he would tell modern-day employers that they should not pay starvation wages. It is not hurting anyone. In this section, Dr. Laura mentions those who feel it is okay to cheat on their taxes, to fudge insurance claims, to file frivolous lawsuits, and to take dishonest advantage of generous return policies of stores. These losses are paid by higher prices and taxes by everyone in society. I was only borrowing it. This is a tip from one of Dr. Laura's listeners. Never take it for granted that just because you live in the same house with someone, you're at liberty to take or use their personal things. This behavior usually leads to taking liberties with other people who do not live in your house. After college, I worked as a CPA for an accounting firm that performed external audits. Fortunately, I did not encounter fraud on any of my audit engagements, but several of my associates did. One was a classic situation where the bookkeeper borrowed cash from an outstanding deposit listed on the bank reconciliation and kept rolling it forward, of course. In a sad situation, the divorced accountant created bogus credits on his personal credit cards that were booked as customer refunds. Then he was able to afford the purchase of plane tickets to visit his kids. This was a very sad situation. My recollection is he was only fired. The company declined to alert the police. Sometimes I have trouble looking for pictures illustrating my point. And here, The Wolf of Wall Street is a classic example of this sort of thing, where he says in the movie speech, greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all its forms, greed for life, for money, for love, for knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, which many people believe today. Typically in a small company where the bookkeeper starts borrowing from the till, these borrowings start out small, but when the thief discovers how easy it is to borrow, they start borrowing more and more until the fraud becomes more and more obvious. And the typical way to guard against fraud is to follow good internal controls. One key control is to avoid having the person doing the accounting and bank reconciliations to also handle the cash, and that's called a separation of duties. He deserves it. Why steal from someone just to get back at them? One of Dr. Laura's listeners said, I used to steal from my mom because I thought it served her right. Then my sister began to steal from me. I guess that served me right. I'm now a little wiser at 23. It's not hurting anyone. Have you ever gotten discounts from your children at the movies by lying about their age? If so, Dr. Laura and the Torah also do not approve. And this category also includes those who use bootleg software. In my favorite Roman Stoic philosopher, Epictetus tells us of someone who stole his lamp one night. He got the better end of the exchange. For Epictetus not only lost his lamp, but he kept his faith. For the man who stole his lamp, in exchange for the lamp, he consented to become a thief, becoming faithless. Everyone else does it, and here's the picture of the Somali pirates. That's kind of like a good example of this. Morality is not determined by taking a vote or a poll. As Dr. Laura reminds us, the more frightening version of this is gang and mob mentality. It is true that larger groups of people are capable of greater evil than most individuals would commit individually. The mob gives each individual permission and acceptance for base behavior. All is fair in love, war, and in business. Dr. Laura tells us that the rabbis forbid you to ask a merchant for a price if you are not interested in buying it, because it raises false hope. One egregious example is people who insist on wasting realtors' time by looking at new houses when they have no intention of buying them, which not only steals their time, but can also lead them to be envious of their neighbor. Dr. Laura quotes this exhortation of Jesus from Luke. Tax collectors also came to him to be baptized and said to him, "Teacher, what shall we do?" And he said to them, "Collect no more than is appointed you." Soldiers also asked him, "And we, what shall we do?" And he said to them, "Rob no one by violence and false accusation, and be content with your wages." The Torah in Leviticus exhorts us that the wages of a hired worker shall not remain with you overnight. When you contract with someone to do work for you, you should pay them promptly, particularly if they're a small business such as a lawn service. Dr. Laura notes, "I get so many calls from folks whose family members borrow money from them and then, feeling an illicit sense of entitlement, don't pay the debts back. Additionally, there are the folks who cheat each other out of inheritances because they feel emotionally entitled. Now, my additional advice is you should never loan anything to family or friends that you cannot afford to lose, although parents will often loan large amounts to their children for critical purposes, like a down payment on a house. So that's just part of life. Now, when I was involved with divorce support groups, on rare occasion, there were single mothers who were just plain stuck because they could not hire an attorney. Sometimes in life, thoughts and prayers are not enough. Sometimes you need to loan your neighbor $1,000 or $2,000 from somewhere. Now, fortunately, I had a relationship with an affordable divorce attorney and earned a professional salaries. And sometimes I was repaid and sometimes not. I work here. I earn it. Why risk your job by stealing from your employer? Apart from the fact that stealing is wrong, the risks far outweigh the benefits. Don't steal office supplies. Don't cheat on your expense accounts. As Dr. Laura notes, writing pads, pens, folders, and desk lamps are not kept in stock as door prizes for employees. Playing computer games, surfing the net, or even just personal reading during company time when there's work to be done is obviously stealing. Let your boss know if you have free time. Perhaps there is other work that needs to be done. It is not much. Dr. Laura observes that some people justify stealing by saying that things are really not big or worth much. Many small thefts are just not worth the risk, like munching on a small piece of candy in the grocery store. If nothing else, small thefts aren't worth the guilt involved, unless you have no conscience. What about sneaking in candy into the movie theater? Sure, the candy at the theater is absurdly expensive, but then that is their business model, and their mall rent is also sky high, even more expensive than the candy they sell. Adding to Dr. Laura's reflections, my advice is this: don't be scrupulous in small things to save up your sins for a whopper. I have known people who are super scrupulous in observing the commandments in small matters, but lie when it comes to selling their car or selling their house, or stealing someone's business from them, apparently reasoning that it is the number of sins in your life that count, rather than their seriousness. The Catholics have the notion of mortal versus venial sins, and the difference is mortal sins are so serious that they deeply damage our love for God as well as our love for our neighbor. Now, whether this is biblical or not is irrelevant. The point is that there really are sins that are much more serious than others. How can you tell the difference? Simple, ask the question: how much harm does this theft cause? Clearly, refilling your drink at a restaurant causes a few pennies worth of harm, while cheating the owner out of his restaurant would be devastating. Now, many parents tell their children, "Do as I say, not as I do." What kind of moral lesson is this? Your actions teach your children more than your words. For better or worse, often your children will mirror your values, so why not teach them better lessons by your actions? Who steals more, the rich or the poor? Since her primary experience is from the listeners who have called into her show, Dr. Laura does not mention the responsibility that the rich have to give alms and assistance to the poor. St. John Chrysostom teaches us that all we own ultimately belongs to God. And Father Kossoff on the OCA website teaches us. St. John Chrysostom once said that the most dangerous words in our vocabulary are mine and thine. These words divide more than they unite. They can relieve us of our responsibility toward the neighbor that God points in our direction. St. John Chrysostom teaches us, "I shall bring you testimony from the divine scriptures, saying that stealing is not only theft of others' goods, but also the failure to share one's goods with others. To deprive the poor is to take what belongs to another. When we do not show mercy, we will be punished just like those who steal. For our money belongs to the Lord, however we may have gathered it. The sin that often precedes theft is covetousness and envy. And that was our first reflection on Dr. Laura's views on the Decalogue. And we also have reflections on Dr. Laura's comments on the commandment, do not bear false witness against your neighbor, or do not slander. And now we'll discuss the source we use for this video. Dr. Laura's book on the Ten Commandments is surprisingly helpful, which is surprising since her competition, in my view, is not books from the likes of Dr. Phil and Oprah and Joel Osteen, but rather the church fathers, the Greco-Roman moral philosophers, and preachers and scholars over the ages. And why is that? First, she had the humility to co-author the book with her Rabbi, Stewart Vogel. Plus, she has many great observations in the many years she did her call-in counseling show on the radio, and now the internet. And although her main audience is stay-at-home moms, I enjoy popping over to her website to listen to a few interesting calls from now and then. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.